I started to stare at Young Hyun, who had evolved into an Aurorn. The time when she started evolving was after she had entered my tent. Suddenly, Young Hyun's body started changing, as if she was a monster evolving. For a brief moment, I, who was holding a sword in caution, started to dumbfoundedly stare at the leaves that bloomed out of her lower body. The rare class of monsters, even in the continent. Aurorn. Although its physical prowess wasn't too strong, it had intelligence and magical abilities, so it was quite a difficult monster to face against. Especially, adventurers who were a bit less talented would find it difficult to deal with this type because they distribute weak pheromones that affect them regardless of gender. This is for a human to change into a monster. I never heard of such a thing in my previous life. Of course, in my situation, I had started off as a goblin, but this compared to that, they were clearly different. In my situation, I had changed into a monster after I had died. However, Young Hyun, who had changed into an Aurorn, had originally been a human who had changed into a monster. So things like this are possible. I was truly flabbergasted. From Young Hyun's pale skin, a green light started to appear. The appearance of her holding her body with both her arms and wriggling as if she was suffering was quite lewd. Soon afterwards, Young Hyun finished and slowly opened her eyes as she began to stare at me. Now. We on the same side. It seems she had decided to abandon living as a human entirely to survive. To be honest, for the rumors of a monster that could understand human language to spread would be critical for me once I leave for the continent. I already had decided to take care of her once the 100 days were up. As if she had recognized this, it was certain that she had chosen this path herself. Seeing the trembling eyes of Young Hyun stare at me, I quietly opened my mouth. All right. In that instant, Young Hyun's face started to brighten. I really wanted to confirm if Young Hyun had really evolved into an Aurorn. I was forced to check a few things. Opening my arms, I hugged Young Hyun into my embrace. What? Although she was shocked, she didn't reject my touch. If you think about it, it was natural for her to change into a monster if you consider her obsession to survive. So it wasn't strange for her not to reject me. However, my objective wasn't that. Rather than Young Hyun's upper body, the leaves of Young Hyun's lower body started to touch with mine. To touch Young Hyun's lips with mine was too much due to my molars. I immediately started to rub Young Hyun's thigh with my hand. Due to the influence of her evolving, her clothes had fully ripped off, so Young Hyun's large chest soon entered my sight. With my other hand, I grabbed Young Hyun's chest and slowly moved it. You really have a fetish. It seems she was quite suspicious at how I didn't disturb her in her human state, but had started to touch her once she had changed into a monster. I didn't really pay attention to it despite her misunderstanding that a guy like me would be manly only when I met a monster. Aurorn's body was a bit more sensitive than a human normally. You couldn't say it was a revolutionary change, but her body was already excited as both legs slowly spread apart as she opened her petal first. It was probably instinct. If I had been caught by a higher level Aurorn, I probably would not be in this world, but unfortunately, the Aurorn of Young Hyun couldn't do so now. That was because the petal had not completely bloomed and there was a bud sitting there. Although I didn't have to necessarily go to this extent, but seeing the body of a woman in a long time, I was slightly stimulated as I bit into Young Hyun's chest. Oof. It seems that she had blocked her scream forcefully with her hand. I began to suck strongly on her chest as she started to squirm, as I felt her waist bending backwards. It seems she was expecting something as her legs started to lock onto my waist while looking at me. I could tell that I was losing my breath, which had gradually become rougher. I could feel the Aurorn's unique pheromones gathering inside my body. If I continue like this, it's probable that I'll lose my rationality. I nudged her away and stroked her something one more time. The squirming, trembling body of Young Hyun. As expected, that sticky liquid started to flow onto my hand. Secretly bringing that unknown liquid towards my mouth, I licked that sweet taste. It was a strong aromatic scent that could nearly make me lose my mind. Even though I had just allowed it to touch my tongue, it felt as if I was being overwhelmed. It's certain. The honey that an Aurorn exerts once it was excited. Like a rare species. Even after going to the continent, it was a type of food only the upper class could eat. It wasn't just her outer appearance that had changed, but it was clear that her whole body had evolved into an Aurorn. I slowly left the blushing Young Hyun's body and began to rise. Hey! Young Hyun's face that was lying on the floor had an extremely dubious expression, however I could feel something running towards here, so I had no choice but to control myself. I slowly opened my mouth to the dumbstruck Young Hyun that was staring at me. If you're hungry, say it. Yes. As such, I prepared myself to face the visitor that was coming for me. Although there was a perception that orcs were oblivious, but in my case, it's not always like that. I could clearly hear the oncoming footsteps. Hearing those nimble, quick footsteps, the likelihood of it being Meave was high. Captain. Like that, without permission, opening the door wide open was Meave. But, something was different. Despite the voice being Meave's, that happy face which had entered this camp was a different species. Pure white skin, small pointy ears, and those nymph wings. Fairy. It was certain that I saw one of the guys from Gorf clan evolving into an orc archer. Though it was obvious, depending on your behavioral patterns, the species that you could evolve to were different depending on the person. I slowly gazed at Meave once again. The sentiments of a fairy's body were quite different compared to the exclamations that she was the best beauty among the goblins. In terms of size, she was a bit smaller than the hobgoblin. That high nose, large eyes, and her lips were disproportionately small. Meve, who had soon entered the door, was beginning to stare into the tent as if she couldn't believe her eyes. It was probably Young-Hyun that she was staring at. Even Meve was totally shocked to see a Young-Hyun who had evolved into a monster. But Meve's expression didn't look to be serious. She was attentively staring at Young-Hyun's appearance, who had her legs spread apart. But it felt as if she was more focused on her changed green skin than her posture itself. And then she started to cry. Large droplets of tears began to flow down her face. Ah! What's this? I'm totally ruined. Completely. Return my green skin. My green skin. Was what she exclaimed as she disappeared from the tent like an arrow. With a puzzled expression, I began to stare at Meve's back. As expected, I also heard the goblins make a commotion about it. Duke. Meve has totally become an ugly woman. Duke. The goddess of goblins doesn't exist now. Duke. As such, in a Blood Dagger clan's tent, you could hear Meve crying for some time, but I tried my best to be indifferent. Other than her having a huge misunderstanding after relating my fetish to the green skin, her selection itself wasn't bad at all. Rather, it opens a path for her to evolve into a magic archer, which could be better. Sometime, I need to tell her that my fetish is actually fair skin color, but for now, I decided to sleep with Young-Hyun for the night. The following day, our tribe decided to attain more achievements. Well, to be precise, we wanted to increase our hunting efficiency. Meve, who had evolved into a fairy archer, and her battle totem along with Young-Hyun's abilities were a masterpiece. But I could feel it. After evolving into an orc warrior, and being above this level before, killing ordinary guys won't be helpful. No matter how much we hunt them, our experience will be minuscule at best. Although it's still somewhat effective for Young-Hyun, who had just evolved into an all-Orn. As for Gorf clan's leader Gorf, Meve, and me, our growths have stopped completely. Of course we would be anxious. I wasn't someone that really had talent. If I did, then I wouldn't have lived such a wretched life before. If you consider now, although I'm trying to use my 10 years of experience as cover for this life, considering Gorf, who was growing extremely fast, it won't be long before he catches up to me. What was fortunate of changing into a monster was definitely species value. In front of really talented people, the meaning of species wouldn't really matter, but despite that, the strength and speed that were higher than the physical abilities of humans was something extremely difficult to attain no matter how hard you trained. The point is, before my limitations arrive, I need to endlessly evolve. Thanks to it, Gorf clan, the other tribe leaders and I had gathered around holding on to our heads in pain. Ouch. Why, Captain? I don't think there's much meaning in hunting humans anymore. Hearing my words, Meve, who now had silver short hair tied up, she opened her mouth. Well, our food supply is overwhelming and the thoughts of other captains are understandable. And the fact that goblins from other tribes wanting to come to ours have increased. Are you implying that you want to rest? It seems that recently the Blood Dagger clan's affinity has increased substantially as the goblins have started to call it our clan. Earlier, I think my confession that I had a fetish was somewhat effective. But, I think Meve didn't fully understand it. Probably due to her being originally a goblin, I don't think she had talent in that type of field despite being smart. I covertly let out a sigh. Eating dinner with me was Gorf, who opened his mouth. It seems that you desire an honorable battle. Kyutyuk. Half of what you said is correct. Kyuk. Although a few goblins still say that the Blood Dagger clan is despicable and does not know honor, I know for sure. I'm not sure what you know, but I surely don't know what honor is. Lately, the battles are not satisfying. It seems that the humans around here are too weak. If it weren't for that plant lady, of course we wouldn't be able to enjoy such battles, but lately I have the feeling that my body is rather stiff. Though our objective was different, what we wanted was the same. A greater battle. I nodded at what Gorf had to say. There are no worthwhile foes in this forest anymore. Even the goblins here are not worthy of entering our tribes. I request that we officially move our settlement. I will receive that request. Agreed. Great. It was an acceptable proposal. At this state, we shouldn't be indecisive in moving at all. Rather, it would be better to move the whole tribe. Thus, Gorf's selection was a very correct decision. It's an exaggeration to say that we had already killed off nearly all the humans in the southern forest. Probably, there are people who are still living on and fighting somewhere covertly. But, hunting these guys was already meaningless. After this episode is over, I could start to imagine us going into a drought once we entered the continent. Although I didn't know during my human period, the selection of the number of summoned humans was either plentiful or lacking was not determined by the abilities of the surviving humans, but also how much stronger the goblins were that had been summoned at the same time. Anyways, Gorf and I were already resolute on moving to a different place. But the problem of moving was... where to? It has been quite a while since the tutorial has started. The roads to the west and east were blocked by rivers, so the only place we could move were limited to just north. If I recall, if we move north, Gorf and I will have the fight we wanted. However, we too will be at risk. The one who had the same degree of motivation as me. Later on to be known as the Queen of the North, I'm sure that person had started from the north if I remember. That person had extremely quick adaptability from the beginning. She had easily won the first battle and easily adjusted to the system. Once she entered the continent, she was one of the elites, as she would be what you'd call a talented person. In other words, genius or a summoned who had been given a special type of advantage. Among those geniuses, one of them was precisely the Queen of the North. After accessing the continent, she would conquer countless dungeons and monsters after receiving training, and within 5 years, she would establish her own city with her guild. Afterwards, that Queen of the North would battle against the Salvation Knights and inflict a huge injury on the St. Sword's power. She was quite a grateful person, but it was a rumor that I heard at a bar, so I'm not sure, but if it's really true, then entering the North would be quite foolish. The reason why was because the way the Queen of the North operated was extremely fierce, also I heard at that time. Also, I wonder how the Northern Forest is. Wouldn't it be cold? It was cold. It was probable that those people who had started in the south won't know. It will be terribly rigorous. Well, it didn't matter where third-rates like us start. But still, the north was really harsh. What if another species other than goblins appear? No, the weather I meant. The food we could eat were only monsters. Even if we were to try and obtain something, it would take quite a long time. Rather, it wouldn't be a problem to these goblins, since I had swept clean most of the summoned goblins that were near the vicinity of the Queen of the North. Queen of the North. I've heard a lot of rumors, but isn't she technically a summoned woman who knows nothing as well? Although I did hear numerous stories of the Queen in the North, I couldn't believe it is an orc who has been tearing down enemies since the start of the tutorial. Everybody knows it's an exaggeration. Well, it would be nice if it was an exaggeration as well. When I had first seen the Queen of the North, I felt that the world was quite unfair. If you had seen her as well, you'd probably know that feeling. Ah, this girl was chosen. And think like that. Well, it's alright. Isn't that the same as well with the Saint Sword? Here, only those who are destined will become successful. I wish there could be a droppable item that could allow you to evolve. Cuke. Cuke. I should think about that once I actually enter a dungeon nearby. After drinking with Quasiology, although I was in a mess, I could clearly remember the words that one guy said. Queen of the North, a real ruler who possessed strength, intelligence of course, leadership and popularity. But it wasn't a fight that was without hope. Even if the guy I had met from the past was truthful, over here we had Gorf and I who had finished our evolutions into orcs. Especially, Gorf was quite strong even of the orcs. The story that she had cut through an orc with a sword in the tutorial was definitely an exaggeration. If you think about it, it's a story that doesn't make any sense at all. The act that a girl had killed over 10 goblins on her first battle was an exaggeration to begin with, even when men had run away from the site due to fear. Finishing my thoughts, I slowly looked at Gorf and opened my mouth. Let's go to the north. Kayuk. Coldness, harsh weather, danger, honor, so you pursue those kinds of things. Blood dagger. Definitely different. Gorf connected what I said with those as he laughed. Meave, who was sitting beside me as my lieutenant, looked at my eyes as she nearly chuckled. Coldness, harsh weather, danger, honor, I definitely don't want these at all. Rather, what I wanted to attain was that honey hidden in that place. But, since Gorf's misunderstanding would be greatly beneficial, I was resolute to leave it like this. I only desire victory. Even I was quite embarrassed saying this line. But wanting victory was the truth. I need to get stronger, and there was a lot of people I had to meet. Kayuk. Very good. Very good. Then right after we prepare, we will head to the north. Of course we will leave the cowards that don't want to go here. What we need are warriors. Good. As such, we finished our short meeting. After returning to each of our clans and explaining the situation, the goblins of Gorf clan were in a very frantic mood. We are going to the north. Duke. It's an honorable battle. It's time to display our brave Gorf clan's strength. Although it would be thankful for Blood Dagger clan to show such a response, but they had a vague response. The majority was that they didn't want to go, but they had no choice but to. Although it's not attractive, I never had a loss while following the captain's words. Duke. The north seems cold. But if we all are together, it'll be warm. But being alone is even more cold. We are the Blood Dagger clan. We will follow the captain. Duke, but must we have to go? Duke. Seeing them like this, the goblins were quite cute. It was a situation where I even wondered why I had thought of these goblins as dangerous in the past. Although it was somewhat understandable on how they attacked us, but right now, these were very loyal clan members. And the fact that Gorf clan's Gorf and I didn't maintain our distance made these goblins more pleased with the clan. Thankfully, there were no goblins that wanted to stay behind in the end. Not only that, the rest of the tribes were the same. Since there were so many belligerent goblins, the rest of the clan members didn't request to leave. Rather, they were in a joyous state. To conclude, we quickly finished our preparations and marched on north. The boisterous goblins began to cut trees along the way and made baskets, which they sloppily tried and make coats out of human skin, while others were preparing other things in advance for the foreseeable future. The problem was Younghyun. Since she was a plant, she was extremely susceptible to the cold. Thus, we wrapped her up with large tree leaves and carried her. If her body were to freeze, then I wouldn't mind embracing her in my arms along the way. Thank you. No. Right now, we are on the same side. Ah. Yes. Yes, Captain. Though it was a bit talk, unfortunately, despite evolving into an all-Rawn, she couldn't follow along the Munchter's conversations. But, thankfully, it seems that her ears had opened as she was able to understand to some extent. It seems that it will take a few more years before it will be somewhat useful. We are departing. Durike. Durike. Boom. 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 With drums of human skin and wooden clubs colliding, we began to march on north. After nearly dominating all of the south, the increasing goblin numbers were immense. Considering how the population of the tutorial was originally, the population of goblins and hobgoblin troops was like a nation moving. Even more, all kinds of advertisement that we did as we marched caused the surviving goblins here and there began to join us who had wondered what in the world was going on. To complete the tutorial by defeating the Queen of the North was like a painted dream scenario. Since the march was boring, it was effective to bring dried meat beforehand. Eating the meat that had parted ways with its green leather was a splendid visual. Although the taste was bland, it felt as if I was chewing on some really soft dried squid. Younghyun. Yes. Yes, Captain. Should I offer you some honey? It was quite cute seeing Younghyun lower her head in embarrassment after saying that line. After evolving into a monster, even after being accustomed to her body of flowing honey, she was still not accustomed to giving it out. The taste was honey, but in truth, it wasn't that, so she couldn't help be embarrassed. But the addictiveness was too strong. It was a strange pleasant feeling. Since I simply pressed Younghyun down. Simply, although it was a pleasant feeling to make fun of Younghyun, but the sweet melting sweetness of that honey was something more extraordinary. The satisfaction to enjoy what I couldn't in my previous life was uplifting. To explain it, I thought that maybe this was obvious. Soon afterwards, the disappeared Younghyun began to bring back honey. In the past, it was an exquisite food that I couldn't eat. It was only more motivation for me to get stronger. Here. Here it is. Please. Enjoy it, Captain. I continued to walk as I thought of the future. First, in this kind of world, the treatment of the strong, whether it were monsters or humans, were the same. Like the time I was dumbfounded backstabbed in my previous life. And the death of Kwasuji that followed. Even the cold reception I had received at the Sant Swords Guild house was all because I was weak. Although I am conscious of myself being too strong one day, I had a lot of things to do. First, even though she probably won't remember me and be rather scared, I needed to confirm if Kwasuji was well and if possible bring her to my side. And secondly, I needed to repay that Sant Sword of what I had received in full. In that chain of situations, the most foolish was the past Kim Tae-sung. It wasn't like I was going to follow her to the ends of the world and exact my revenge like a crazy murderer, but whenever her face materializes in my mind, I can't help but be extremely angry. I will return what I suffered. I will repay grace with grace, and death with death. I quietly lit my fighting spirit aflame as I started to walk. Gorf had coincidentally met my eyes and brought his hand to his chest, so I likewise laid my hand onto my chest as we continued our footsteps. To the north. It seems we're almost there. It would be better to head to the side where the wind doesn't blow as much to settle our camp there. Ryuk. Let's do that. No matter how great of a warrior you are, fighting against these winds are beyond our capabilities. I nodded at Gorf's words. In the meantime, thanks to our stockpile of food, we were able to enter the north quickly despite the long march. Although we only had 50 days left for the tutorial, we moved at a somewhat relaxed pace. The march itself had taken 20 days, so we only had a mere 30 days left for the duration of the tutorial. The time was extremely tight. Anyways, I didn't know that we of the south would end up heading towards north, but I think I know why the people of the north were naturally strong. The harsh winds that attacked my skin felt as if my feet and hands were about to freeze up. To be able to finish the tutorial in such an environment shows why it's not hard to end up being strong. If you come to think of it, I think I heard that the monsters up north have some of the most named aquatic species. It seems that they had selected the most advantageous species to survive. Drake. Cold. North is really cold. I could start to hear the mumbling complaints. The pressure that we had to fight as quickly as possible once we arrived started to strain on me. I needed to somewhat relieve the complaints of my clan members. Of course the solution to that would be war and battle. The green skin that loved to fight the moment they were born, it was a useful method to reduce stress. Of course, it was the same for me likewise who was also influenced as a monster. I could feel myself being slowly frustrated due to walking continuously. I slowly started to inspect the conditions of the clan members behind me. Whether it was goblins or hobgoblins, although they were better off than humans with their extra layer of thick skin, but Younghyun was having an extremely difficult time enduring. Me who had a bit of natural resistance was fine it seems. It was obvious that Younghyun, who had evolved into a plant monster, couldn't resist the cold. I decided to embrace her with my body as we went. I wanted to avoid the situation of having a girl who was absurdly my subordinate be lost. Younghyun. Over here. Ah. Yes. Thank you. An orc's body was much larger than a human. Even if Younghyun had evolved into an Allorn, her size was smaller compared to me. I grabbed her waist and pulled her towards me. Ah! She screamed as she naturally had her body thrown towards me. It wasn't just the cloths and leaves that were used when building on tent that were on her body. I also felt a little cold, so I had no choice but to wear those as well. The other goblins all had either tree leaves or clothes that they made from dead humans tightly wrapped and fastened on their bodies. Are you alright? Yes. Thank you. Seeing her blush, I continued to resume my footsteps forward. A bit more when we will finally enter the north. We have finally arrived. Ha. Ha. Despite being attached to my body, as if she was cold, her breath started to become rougher. Pulling her a bit closer, I was able to figure out as to why her breaths were getting shorter. She's excited. Not sure if it's the species of Allrawn itself, after confirming whether she was real or not. Occasionally, she'd fall into this state at times whenever she sees me. Whether I was being marked as prey by her or if she has Stockholm Syndrome, I'm not sure, but it wasn't something I necessarily hated. Being indifferent, I moved with Young-hyun in my embrace. I continued to rub my body with her. I had rather welcomed this kind of scenario than focusing on the cold and lonely march. She slowly started to mess with my strong body with her soft chest. If Young-hyun came out like this, I would be excited likewise. Not sure if she realized this, but her honey was flowing down my body. Ha! Ha! As if that wasn't enough, she slowly locked her thighs with mine. Thanks to this, I was constantly trying to get into the petal of Young-hyun. Whether it was because she had a hard time trying to find it on my evolved monster's body or that she was not accustomed to it, I wasn't sure, but she was having an extremely difficult time searching for it. Though I wanted to help, a new thought started to materialize. I stared at Young-hyun and laughed. That's so. I'm sorry. A voice that crawls like an ant. I made a playful expression as I opened my mouth in reaction. Do what you want. Ah. Ha. Ah. Thank you. If she was mentally human, I don't think she would attach herself to me like this. She was trying her hardest to match her petal with my thing as she covertly withdrew her bottom out. Since it wasn't going as she had planned, in the end, she stared at me with a sorrowful expression. PL. Please. Please. I beg of you. She was basically saying that it didn't matter since everyone around her were green monsters. Or that she couldn't control her excitement and didn't care about her shame. Anyways, she looked at me pleadingly. That hot, sticky liquid that was on my body. I thrust it into Young-hyun's body. Ah? Ah? Knowing that she would scream, I placed my palm onto her mouth in advance. The feeling inside her was ecstatic. Not even exaggerating, the feeling was so much greater than it felt of a human. I could finally understand why crazy humans tried to catch Allrawns to their deaths. That sticky and tightening feeling that was grasping my thing was hard to describe. Ha. Huh? Aside from what I felt, the other side was already melting into her own pleasure. Although she hadn't moved her body directly yet, she trembled as she looked up into the skies. Hey. In the end, a large scream escaped out from her mouth. P? Duke. It's an enemy. Q. Human. The goblins who were walking suddenly screamed as if there was definitely something ahead. While the goblins were making a clamorous commotion, Maeve was staring towards my side, in which I avoided her eyes. Ha. Ha. In that period, Young-hyun was busy trying to solve the reverberations of her body afterwards. Her face was in a state so flustered, I was curious as to just how high she had risen in ecstasy. It's a first. Whether it was an orgasm that she felt or the intercourse itself, I didn't specify, but Young-hyun nodded. Yes. Yes, thank you. It was an expression that she couldn't believe it herself. I didn't answer to her expression and slowly nudged her body away from me. Though I wasn't certain, I could certainly feel the magic in my body depleted. Those humans with exhausted magic would soon die a horrible death. It seems there was one more reason to evolve. I slowly inspected Young-hyun's body. Green skin. The face that was no different from when she was a human. A weapon that wouldn't be an exaggeration of a body. And above else, that great feeling inside. Though I didn't fully enjoy it, we had already arrived at our destination. After we settled down, I can embrace that body once more. Young-hyun, who had caught on to what I was roughly thinking, was blushing immensely. As such, we walked for a while as her body slowly cooled down. It's a human village. Drake. The thought that we could capture a nice strategic base made me open my mouth. Are there castle walls? Not sure if those are castle walls, but I can only see strange houses made out of ice. Drake. The source that we could capture the site of a human base in this severe weather was a great plus. This was probably a village that had endured numerous assaults from monsters. And the houses were made of ice. Not sure if there was a magician around, but the houses looked as if they were made by Eskimos from television. I'm not totally sure if this village was a part of Queen of the North's faction, but I didn't care. One way or another, we were going to totally wipe the humans of the North. Let's start. The battle that the Gorf clan wanted. Kayuk. Kayuk. Drake. 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 Whether it was from the excitement of war, soon the vicinity became boisterous. I too started to grip my sword tighter. Everyone's emotions were the same. We wanted to soak ourselves with the blood of our enemies. Charge. Drake. Drake. As if they wanted to evolve into a drummer, all the goblins continued to excitedly pound the logs that were made of human skin. Boom. 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 Although there was no shape or form, the atmosphere started to rise in tone. As the drums thumped louder towards the peak, the Gorf clan started to run forward. Victory or death. The same thinking of an orc. As if he was originally an orc and not a goblin, Gorf's voice echoed throughout the field. Grike. Victory or death. Victory or death. Grike. It seems the accumulated stress of the march had exploded. The group was certainly encompassed in madness. There was definitely no formation or strategy. They rushed towards the enemies as they started to step and push one another. Even goblins that had tripped were crushed to death by their fellow comrades. Wow. Wow. It was a movement that eliminated any sort of military strategy or tactics. If the foes were of similar levels, it was no mistake that we could be annihilated with this reckless rush. The funny thing was that calmness had found me in this situation. As if my subordinates wanted to rush out as well, they started to squirm and wriggle as they stood by for orders. Blood Dagger clan will move separately. Grike. Understood.